There's a moment in life, usually brief, usually quiet, when something doesn't add up. Maybe it happens when you're staring at your reflection for too long and suddenly you don't feel like you. Or maybe it's when you wake up from a vivid dream and for a split second you're convinced it was real. And then just like that, reality snaps back into place and you brush it off. But what if you shouldn't? What if that moment where things felt off wasn't a glitch? What if it was a glimpse into something deeper? Everything around you feels solid. The world, the people in it, the ground beneath your feet. It all seems undeniable. But the problem with reality is that it only feels real because your brain tells you it is. Think about it. Your entire experience of life is just a collection of electrical signals processed inside a dark, silent skull. You've never actually seen the world, not directly. Your eyes just absorb light. Your brain interprets the signals, and voila, it presents you with a moving, colorful, three-dimensional world. But here's where things get weird. Your brain doesn't show you everything. It only shows you what it thinks you need to see. Ever lose your phone while it was right in front of you? That's not bad eyesight. That's your brain editing out information it doesn't think is important. It's the same reason why people will swear they never saw a sign or a roadblock, even though it was right there. Your mind is filtering reality at all times, cutting out details, bending perception, creating a useful version of the world instead of an accurate one. And sometimes that useful version is a complete illusion. A neuroscientist once ran an experiment where he placed volunteers in a room, played 2 different sound recordings in each ear, and asked them to repeat what they heard in just one ear while ignoring the other. What they didn't know was that midway through the experiment, the ignored ear started saying something completely different, something impossible to miss. But when asked about it, most of them had no memory of ever hearing it. Their brain simply deleted the information. This happens all the time. Every second, your brain makes micro adjustments to your perception, filling in gaps, distorting memories, filtering out things it deems irrelevant. And that means one thing: your reality is not what you think it is. If your brain can erase things, if it can fabricate memories, if it can make you feel certain about something that never even happened, then how much of what you know is real? And more importantly, how much of it can you change? The mind is a master illusionist, crafting a seamless experience of reality so convincing that we rarely stop to question it. But once you start to see through the cracks, you begin to wonder, if reality is being filtered, what exactly am I not seeing? It turns out quite a lot. Your brain is not just filtering out details, it's actively creating things that don't exist. Take motion, for example. Right now you feel like time is flowing smoothly, that everything is happening in real time. But that's not what's actually happening. Your brain processes reality in frames, like a movie, and then it stitches those frames together. The fluid motion you experience, that's an illusion. Your brain fills in the gaps so you don't notice the lag. But it gets even weirder. In a famous experiment, researchers discovered something called post-diction, where your brain actually alters your perception of the past based on new information. Here's how it works. Participants were shown 2 flashes of light in quick succession. Normally, you'd expect them to say they saw 2 separate flashes, but if the scientists added a 3rd flash after the first 2, the brain would rewrite the experience, making it seem like all 3 flashes happened evenly spaced out, even though they didn't. Your brain literally went back in time and altered what you thought happened. Now apply that to everything else in life. Every conversation you've had, every event you've witnessed, every memory you hold on to. How much of it is real, and how much has been filled in or edited by your mind? You might think your memories are trustworthy, that the things you recall must have happened exactly as you remember them. But that's just another illusion. The human memory is shockingly unreliable. In fact, every time you recall a memory, your brain rewrites it. It's like opening and saving a file over and over again. Every time you access it, small changes happen, and over time, those changes can completely distort the original event. That means the past you think you remember may not even be the past that happened. And this has a huge implication. If memories can be altered, if reality can be filtered and distorted, then what's stopping you from changing your own perception of the world entirely? What if you could rewrite reality in your favor? Most people assume they're stuck with the way things are, that their past defines them, that their experiences shape who they are, that what they see is what is. But the truth is, if reality is just a mental construction, then you have far more control over it than you've been led to believe. And that raises an even bigger question. If the world you experience is largely a mental projection, then who's really in control? If reality is just a projection of the mind, then the question isn't what is real, but rather who is controlling the projection. Most people assume that they are the ones in control of their own thoughts, but are they? Or are they just running pre-installed mental programs without even realizing it? Think about the way you react to situations. You get frustrated in traffic, annoyed at an email, or anxious about something that hasn't even happened yet. But ask yourself, did you consciously decide to feel that way, or did it just happen? Most of the time, we don't choose our thoughts. They arise automatically, shaped by years of conditioning, past experiences, and deep-rooted beliefs we never consciously installed. Psychologists have a name for this: cognitive automation. It's the idea that most of our thoughts, behaviors, and emotions aren't fresh decisions. We're just repeating patterns we've learned over time. You think you're reacting to life in real time, but in reality, you're just playing out old scripts. Here's where things get interesting. If your brain is filtering reality and serving you a pre-edited version of the world, and if your reactions are just habits firing off automatically, then how much of your life is actually yours? Are you really thinking, or is thinking just happening to you? Most people live in a loop, waking up, reacting, repeating. They never question whether the thoughts in their head are actually theirs or just echoes of past conditioning. But once you start observing these patterns, something shifts. You begin to see that your thoughts don't define you, that your reactions aren't set in stone, that the way you interpret the world isn't the only way to see it. And once you realize that, you have a choice. You can either continue living inside the mental construct your brain has built for you, or you can start hacking the system. The question is, if you could rewrite the way you see reality, how far would you go? If you could rewrite the way you see reality, what would you change first? Would you remove your fears? Rewire the way you respond to setbacks? Completely shift your perception of who you are and what's possible? This isn't just a thought experiment. It's something people have done for centuries, whether they realized it or not. Take the case of people who experience spontaneous remission, those who, against all odds, recover from life-threatening illnesses without any clear medical explanation. Many of them report a radical shift in perception before their healing. Something changed in the way they saw themselves, the world, and their relationship to it. Their beliefs changed, their internal reality changed, and somehow their external reality followed. That's the power of perception. It doesn't just shape how you experience life, it shapes what is even possible for you. But most people never realize they can change their perception. They assume their thoughts are facts, their emotions are justified, and the way they see the world is just the way it is. But let's take a closer look at that. Ever heard of learned helplessness? In the 1960s, psychologists Martin Seligman and Stephen Meyer ran an experiment on dogs. They placed some dogs in a cage with an electric floor and gave them a way to escape. Naturally, the dogs figured it out and moved to safety, but then they put other dogs in a cage where no escape was possible. These dogs, no matter how much they struggled, couldn't stop the shocks. Eventually, they gave up. Here's the disturbing part. When those same dogs were later placed in a cage where escape was possible, they didn't even try. They had learned on a deep level that no matter what they did, nothing would change. So they stopped trying, even when the cage door was wide open. Now, imagine how many people are living in mental cages of their own making. They've been conditioned by past failures, by societal expectations, by old beliefs they never questioned. And now, even when change is completely possible, they don't take it, because in their mind, the cage is still locked. But here's the truth. It was never locked to begin with. The limits you think exist, the patterns you think you can't break, the beliefs that feel like just the way things are, they are only real if you don't challenge them. The moment you start questioning them, the cage door swings open. So the real question isn't whether reality is an illusion, it's whether you're willing to step outside of the one you've been living in. Once you realize the cage was never locked, a strange thing happens. You hesitate. Because stepping out means confronting a reality you've never known before. It means realizing that many of the struggles, the limitations, the things you once blamed on circumstance were actually self-imposed. And that's a hard pill to swallow. It's easier to believe that the world is against you than to admit you've been holding the door shut from the inside. But here's the thing. Once you see through the illusion, you can't unsee it. It's like realizing a magician's trick in the middle of the show. You might still see the performance, but you know what's really happening behind the scenes. And that's where real transformation begins. Because if reality is just a filtered projection of your mind, then what happens when you take control of the projector? The power of perception, a mind-altering experiment. Psychologists ran a study that shows just how deep this goes. They took a group of hotel cleaners and told half of them that their daily work, walking, lifting, scrubbing, was actually a form of exercise that burned calories and improved their health. The other half weren't given any information. After a few weeks, something insane happened. The group that was told their work was exercise started to lose weight, lower their blood pressure, and increase their energy levels, without changing a single thing about their routine. Their belief alone triggered a physiological shift in their bodies. Think about that for a second. Reality didn't change. Their perception of reality changed, and that was enough to cause measurable physical effects. Now apply that to your life. What if your fears only exist because you believe in them? What if your bad luck is just your brain filtering out opportunities? What if your self-doubt is nothing more than a mental reflex, one that can be rewritten? Because if perception alone can alter the body, shape experience, and change outcomes, then you're not just living inside reality, you're actively creating it, hacking your own perception. So here's the real challenge. How do you start seeing differently? How do you break out of the default filters your mind has placed on your reality? You start small. Challenge your assumptions. The next time you feel like something is just the way it is, ask yourself, is that actually true, or is that just the way I've been taught to see it? Expose yourself to new ideas. Your brain builds reality based on what it's been exposed to. Read books, listen to people who think differently, and put yourself in situations that make you question what you think is normal. Watch your thoughts in real time. Throughout the day, start observing your own mind like an outsider. The way you react, the things you assume, the stories you tell yourself, just watch them. And then ask, is this really me? Or is this just conditioning? Because the moment you become aware of your filters, they start to dissolve. And when that happens, the world doesn't just look different, it becomes different. So the only question left is, are you willing to look closer? Reality isn't fixed, it's fluid, shaped by the lens you view it through. And once you realize that, you're no longer just a passenger in life, you're the one steering. Most people will never question the filters placed over their minds. They'll go through life seeing what they've been conditioned to see, believing what they've been told to believe. But you don't have to. So start questioning, start looking closer. and most importantly, start choosing the reality you want to live in. If this made you think, drop a comment below and let me know. What's one belief you've started to question recently? Let's start a conversation. And if you want more deep dives like this, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. There's a lot more to uncover.